Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to Ummah Radio. You are listening to the Mustalahul Hadeeth class with myself, Abu Mus'ab. Alright, so we are still busy with the kitab known as Muqaddimatun fi Usul al-Hadith of Maulana Abdul Haq ad-Dihlawi rahimahullah. And in our previous class we had just completed chapter number 9, which was the end of page 95. Tonight inshallah we begin with the 10th chapter of this kitab, starting on the top of page 96. In our last class we had just touched on the fact that there are numerous other kitabs apart from Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim which contains ahadith which are also Sahih. In other words, that all the authentic ahadith are not contained only in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, but rather there are Sahih ahadith which are in all the other kitabs which are not even found in the two kitabs Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So that was in our last class. So tonight inshallah we move on to the 10th chapter. So to begin with, Bismillah walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. He says, Al-Faslu al-Ashiru fil kutubi sittati al-mashhura. The 10th chapter, it deals with the 6 famous books of hadith. Now we know he'll give you he says, Al-Kutubu Sitta, the 6 books. He says, Al-Kutubu Sittatu al-Mashhuratu al-Muqarraratu fil Islam allati yuqalu laha as-Sihahu Sittatu hiya. He says the 6 famous books of hadith which are known in Islam as the 6 famous books of hadith, which are called by another name called as the Sihahu Sitta, the 6 authentic books of hadith. He says they are: number 1, Sahih al-Bukhari; number 2, Sahih Muslim; number 3, Jami' al-Tirmidhi; number 4, Sunan Abu Dawud; number 5, Sunan al-Nasai; and number 6, Sunan Ibn Majah. Those are the 6 books. He says, وَعِنْدَ الْبَعْضِ الْمُوَطَّأ بَدْلُ ibn Majah. And according to some ulama, they chose the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah instead of Sunan Ibn Majah. He says, وَصَاحِبُ جَامِعُ الْأُصُولِ اخْتَارَ الْمُوَطَّأ. And the author of the kitab known as Jami' al-Usul, he has chosen this kitab, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, over and above, or rather I should say over and in preference, instead of the kitab known as Sunan Ibn Majah. Now, as you would have learned previously, that the 6 books of hadith, they have varying levels. The most authentic being Sahih al-Bukhari, and the lowest level of them all being Sunan Ibn Majah. So, according to some ulama, the Muwatta of Imam Malik is more authentic than Sunan Ibn Majah. That is why they chose the Muwatta of Imam Malik over Sunan Ibn Majah. But the well-known, as he is saying over here, the well-known view, as he is saying over here, in fact that's how it is known, the 6 famous books of hadith for this particular purpose, that this is what is mashhur, this is what is well known, that Sunan Ibn Majah is the 6th of the famous books. Okay, question here, when you say Imam Malik, you mean the Maliki madhab Imam Malik? Yes, the Muwatta of Imam Malik ibn Anas rahimahullah, the author, or rather I should say the founder of the Maliki madhab. It's his kitab al-Muwatta. So, and this is also something I commented on previously, that we say the most authentic book of hadith is Sahih al-Bukhari. But before Sahih al-Bukhari was written, the ulama had said that the most authentic book of hadith was the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah. And in fact, like I mentioned last time, if I'm not mistaken, it was Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah who had made this statement regarding the kitab, that the most authentic kitab after the Quran is the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah. And like I explained, the ulama explained this, saying that the kitab which was well and known and most famous at the time was the Muwatta of Imam Malik, and Sahih al-Bukhari was not yet written. And that if Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah had to live after Sahih al-Bukhari was written, then he would have said that this is the most authentic kitab after the Quran. But anyhow, that's just varying opinions. Those who choose Ibn Majah instead of the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Okay, just one point of view. He says the author of Jami' al-Usul. Now, Jami' al-Usul is also amongst the famous books of hadith, and it's not famous in the sense that you would normally open Jami' al-Usul and you start reading and stuff of the sort here. No, it's a different type of famous, I would put it in that sense, because it's more a, as you would call it, a compilation you would say the compilation of the other books of Hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, and so on and so forth. They've been compiled into this book here, which is known as Jami' al-Usul. So anyhow, now, who is the author of Jami' al-Usul? The author of Jami' al-Usul is Imam Ibn al-Athir. Now, before you get confused or get mixed up or get the wrong impression, we all know there's a very famous Imam Ibn al-Athir when it comes to Tariq, the history of Islam, the famous Imam Ibn al-Athir. But this is not that Imam Ibn al-Athir. This Imam Ibn al-Athir, his name is Abu Sa'adat Ibn al-Athir, or if I were to give his full name, he is Al-Mubarak ibn Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim al-Shaybani al-Jazari Abu Sa'adat Majduddin Ibn al-Athir. That's his whole full name. So if you want to put it in simple terms, Imam Abu Sa'adat Ibn al-Athir, he is the author of Jami' al-Usul. But the other one, the famous Imam Ibn al-Athir, who is the Mu'arrikh, the one who is in the field of Tariq, who wrote the famous kitab Usdul Ghaba fi Ma'rifati Sahaba, that is a different Imam Ibn al-Athir. That is Imam Abu al-Hasan Ibn al-Athir. So two different Imam Ibn al-Athir over here. This one, the Mu'arrikh, he is Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim ibn Abdul Wahid al-Shaybani al-Jazari Abu al-Hasan Izzuddin Ibn al-Athir. So two different ulama, both are Jazaris. Yes, he's a historian, but he's very famous for his kitab Usdul Ghaba and also Al-Kamil fi Tariq. These are his two most famous kitabs of this Imam Ibn al-Athir. But in any case, he's most famous for being a historian. Now, that's I just wanted to clarify that point, that it's a different Imam Ibn al-Athir that we are dealing with here. This one is Imam Abu Sa'adat, and he is well known for his kitab Jami' al-Usul. Okay, so that's on that point over there. Now, before we go any further, there was one additional point I wanted to mention over here. We all call the kitab Sahih al-Bukhari and call the kitab Sahih Muslim. But very few people actually know what are the names of these kitabs. Many people are under the impression that the actual name of the kitab is Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. But in reality, the names are very different and very long, and for that reason it is shrunk down to put it in this form over here. Okay, I'll give you the name of Sahih Bukhari first. Its actual name is Al-Jami'ul Musnadu صحيح المختصر من أمور رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وسننه وأيامه. That is the full name of the kitab, which we just simply know as Sahih al-Bukhari or simply Bukhari. But as you can see, it's a mouthful, it's a very long name. الجامع المسند الصحيح المختصر من أمور رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وسننه وأيامه. That's the full name of Sahih al-Bukhari. And the full name of Sahih Muslim is المسند الصحيح المختصر بنقل العدل عن العدل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is the actual name of the kitab, which we know as Sahih Muslim, or as they sometimes just called Muslim. So these are the actual names of these two kitabs, and not simply Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So that's one point. Now there's another point I want to mention over here. None of this is in the kitab, but it's from my side. But it's also very important that, for the purpose of hadith and understanding the whole thing, to go through all these things. That why is this called Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim? But then he goes on Jami' al-Tirmidhi and Sunan Abu Dawud and so on. Why don't he just call it Sahih al-Tirmidhi or Sunan al-Bukhari and things? Why are there different terms? Is there a difference between them? Yes, there is. The difference between the kitabs, and this is something you will notice when you read the kitabs itself, the layout and stuff of that sort. This is where you will come to see the difference between the books of hadith. Now, firstly, on the point of it being called Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sahih Ibn Hibban, Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, and so on and so forth. Where the point of Sahih comes in is when the author has taken it upon himself that I will only contain in this kitab authentic ahadith which are Sahih. Then that compilation is termed a Sahih. That is why it's Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih ibn Hibban, and so on and so forth. So that's where Sahih comes from. But now you have differing terms. You have Jami', as you can see here, Jami' al-Tirmidhi, which is also known as Sunan al-Tirmidhi. You have the term Jami', you have the term Sunan, you have the term Musnad, you have the term Mu'jam, and all these various terms that the Muhaddithin have named the books. Now, there's a difference between each one of them. So we start with the term which is Jami'. Like for example, Sahih al-Bukhari is a Jami', and Sahih Muslim is a Jami'. But again, we know it famously as Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim for the fact that it only contains authentic ahadith. But anyhow, so what is a Jami'? A Jami' is a kitab. Okay, these terms, Jami', Musnad, Sunan, and things like this, these terms come from how the book is laid out. The layout of the book is how the name is determined. So the kitab like Sahih al-Bukhari and so on and so forth is termed as being Jami'. Now a Jami' is a kitab of hadith which is arranged according to the chapters, as you would find it, the chapters of the deen. Like you would find the chapter of Aqidah, the chapter of Tafsir, the chapter of Fitan, the chapter of virtues, the chapter of signs of Qiyamah, stuff of this sort. This, when it's laid out in this manner, then it is termed as being a Jami'. Now the difference between that and a Sunan is that when you open a book which is a Sunan, Sunan Abu Dawud and so on and so forth, a book of hadith which is termed a Sunan is when the kitab is arranged like a book of fiqh. So like you would open a book of fiqh and you would find Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, Kitab al-Zakah, Kitab al-Sawm, Kitab al-Hajj, and so on and so forth. When the book of hadith is laid out in this manner, you would then term it as being a Sunan. So there you can see the difference between a Jami' and a Sunan. Now there are other ones. For example, another one of the famous ones is what you term a... Okay, again, can you repeat the question? Can you repeat the first one? The first one being a Jami'. Okay, just to understand the difference between a Jami' and a Sunan again, a Jami' is when it is arranged according to chapters. Like for example, the chapter of Aqidah, the chapter of the signs of Qiyamah, the chapter of virtues, the chapter of trials and tribulations, chapter of Tafsir, chapter of Siyar, as you can say the Siyar and Maghazi, Jihad and battles like that, of that sort. When it's laid out in that manner, it's called a Jami'. Difference between that and the Sunan is that the Sunan is basically, it looks exactly like a fiqh kitab. So if you open a fiqh kitab and you will open Kitab al-Tahara, and Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification will be broken down into further categories. The chapter on ghusl, the chapter on wudu, and chapter on tayammum, and so on and so forth. Now in a like manner, a Sunan will be broken down into that particular manner. That you'd have the chapter of Tahara, and it will be broken down into subcategories like this. The chapter of Salah broken down into subcategories, the chapter of Tahajjud, the chapter of Taraweeh, and so on and so forth. That's how a Sunan is arranged. Okay, question as to which books fall under what title. This you will know from the book itself, and this again is what I was telling you, that when you open the book of Hadith, that is how you will come to know which book is what. But in any case, like I mentioned, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are both termed as being Jami'. The Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan al-Nasai, Sunan Ibn Majah, these books are termed as being Sunan. Now, I want to just give you the additional terms as well, because we're not only restricted to Sunan or Jami'. There are additional ones like Musnad, Mu'jam. You have the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, the Musnad of Imam Shafi'i. You have Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir of Imam al-Tabarani, Al-Mu'jam al-Saghir, and so on and so forth. You have these different terms as well. So moving now to the term which is termed as being Musnad. A Musnad is when the chapters are arranged according to the Sahaba. So for example, if you open the Musnad of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, you'd see, for example, Musnad Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, the chapter, the part, or rather I should say this chapter where all the ahadith of Hadith Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu will be found in. So if he reported 6,000 ahadith, all 6,000 will be found in that chapter over there. And if another sahabi only reported one hadith, then under his chapter, his one hadith will come in there. So whether the hadith deals with salah, whether it deals with zakat, whether it deals with hajj, whatever it may be, as long as it's reported from this particular sahabi, it will be in this particular category over here. When it's arranged in this manner, you term it as being musnad. Then the next term I gave you was the one which is known as a mu'ajam. The difference between a musnad and a mu'ajam is that a mu'ajam is arranged according to the teachers of this particular person. So, or rather I should say, who all you narrate this particular hadith from. So let's take for example Al-Mu'ajam al-Kabir of Imam At-Tabarani rahimahullah. He compiled his kitab in a mu'ajam form. So let's say for example, okay, let's put it in practical terms so you can understand it. You are a person, you live in Saudi, you've studied by the famous A'immah of the time. So say you've studied by Sheikh Sudais, you've studied by Sheikh Shuraim, you've studied by Sheikh Hudhaifi, you've studied by Sheikh Ghamidi, and so on and so forth. So these are your shuyukh. So you've maybe heard 400 ahadith from each one of them. So you'd have the Mu'ajam al-Shuraim, for example. Then, as you would call it, the chapter of the hadith which you heard from Shuraim. Then every hadith which you heard from him would be under that category. Now regardless of which sahabi it came from, regardless of whether it's to do with aqidah, whether it's to do with tafsir, whether it's to do with what all and what not, that won't be the deciding factor. Here the deciding factor is which teacher you got it from. That is how a mu'jam is laid out. So that is how you get the way these different names. It's not just simply a name thrown onto a kitab that, okay, I decide I like the name Sunan, so I'll call it Sunan, or I like the name Jami', so I'll call it Jami'. No, each one has a specific name due to the way that the kitab has been laid out. So anyhow, like I say, this is something which is not mentioned inside the book, but it is something which is beneficial to know, so that is why I took the time out to mention this over here. Alright, so anyhow, coming back to the kitab again, we had just finished the part where we mentioned that the author of Jami' al-Usul, who is Imam Abu Sa'adat ibn al-Athir rahimahullah, that he had chosen the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah over Sunan ibn Majah, and chose that as being the 6th book of hadith instead of Ibn Majah. Okay, can you quickly spell out Mu'jam? Mu'jam is Mim, Ain, Jim, Mim. Mu'jam. Yes, that's correct. Mim, Ain, Jim, Mim. Spelled exactly like that. Alright, question over here. Are these footnotes also short biographies? Yes, these footnotes which you see written in the book over here, as you can see, we're skipping a lot of the footnotes because it's all the biographies in a shrunken form of all these famous A'imma. So anyway, just turning back to the first page that we had started tonight, on footnote number 1, he had mentioned that these books are called the Sihah al-Sitta, the 6 Sahih books of hadith. But you say, we know the fact that there are weak hadith in some of the other books, like especially in Sunan ibn Majah. You have not only Sahih, you have Hasan, and you have Da'if as well. So why is it called the Sihah al-Sitta, the 6 Sahih books of hadith? The reason is that it is called that because the majority of the hadith from these books are Sahih. But they are from the 4, apart from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which is Sunan ibn Majah, Sunan Nasa'i, and then you have hadith which are not only Sahih, but you have those which are Hasan, and you have those which are Da'if as well. So because of the majority, we call it the Sihah al-Sitta for that reason. So that was footnote number 1. Footnote number 2 is where the biographies start, where the first one he gives you is Imam Abu Dawud, his name is Sulaiman ibn al-Ash'ath ibn Shaddad ibn Amr al-Azdi, and his kunya is Abu Dawud. Okay, as you can see, he basically tells you next to nothing here about Imam Abu Dawood in the real sense of the thing if you want to go to a biography, but they just basically give you an introduction as to who Imam Abu Dawood rahimahullah is. Born in the year 202 after Hijrah, passed away in the year 275. So lived for 73 years. Then he tells you like روى عن القعنبي ومسلم بن إبراهيم وأبي الوليد الطيالسي وأحمد ويحيى وإسحاق وابن المديني وخلق. So I'll explain this here. He says that Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, for example, he reported from, this person's name is Qa'nab ibn Qa'nab al-Qa'nabi, if I'm not mistaken, but he's better known just as al-Qa'nabi, very famous narrator of hadith. He reports also from Muslim ibn Ibrahim. These are all the big names of a hadith that Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah reports from. Abu al-Walid al-Tayalisi, big name. Ahmad, Imam Ahmad, that he's reporting from. Yahya, this would be Yahya ibn Ma'in, I think, or it could be Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, any one of the two, I'm not exactly 100% certain. That is the Yahya that he reports from. Ishaq, when he uses the term Ishaq like this, then it refers to Imam Ishaq ibn Rahaway. These are all the big, okay, question here, were they Khalaf or Salaf? These were all from the Salaf. As you can see, Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah being from the Salaf, so he's narrating from people above him, meaning that if he is from the Salaf, then they are more rightful to be from the Salaf. So the Ishaq over here is a name which you'll always find in Hadith, Imam Ishaq ibn Rahaway. Some people write it as Rahuya, but it's actually Rahaway. Like Sibaway and all these sort of names, it's actually Farsi, this name Rahaway. So Ishaq ibn Rahaway, this is who Imam Abu Dawud reports from. Imam Ibn al-Madini, again one of the famous ulama of Hadith, Ali ibn al-Madini, this is this Imam Ibn al-Madini over here. And then when he says wa khalq here means and a large group of others as well. So he reports from all these big names here, and he also reports from a large group of other ulama as well. It says وَرَوَى عَنْهُ التِّرْمِذِي. Now this is one point over here. If you look here, روى عن القعنبي, and this is وَرَوَى عَنْهُ التِّرْمِذِي. One says an, one says anhu. That's one point when you're reading the kitab, you'll see these terms always being used, so pay attention to this. When he says rawa an and then the names come, then it means that this is who, like in this case Imam Abu Dawud, learned from. But when he says warawa anhu, then this refers to those people that learned from Imam Abu Dawud. So warawa anhu Tirmidhi wabnuhu Abu Bakr, that Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah and his son, who is now Imam Abu Dawood's son, him and Imam at-Tirmidhi, and also Imam Zakaria as-Saji, Imam Abu Awana and others, all of them studied under Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah. So warawa anhu, so Imam at-Tirmidhi, his son Abu Bakr, Imam Zakaria as-Saji, Imam Abu Awana and others as well, they all were students of Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah. And then he goes on further, Abu Dawud al-Imam al-Muqaddamu fi zamanihi rajulun lam yusbiqhu ahadun ila ma'rifatihi bi takhrij al-ulumi wa basarihi bi mawadi'ihi fi zamanihi. This is all now Imam al-Khalal praising Imam Abu Dawud, saying what a great Imam, like he was at the forefront in his time. He was such a man that no one could surpass him to getting the meaning and the understanding of the hadith and the sciences of the hadith and his insight into the hadith and where it comes from and stuff of the sort. Then he mentions one more thing. He says وقال إبراهيم الحربي ألينا لأبي داود الحديث كما ألينا لداود الحديد. Imam Ibrahim al-Harbi, he commented, he said that hadith was made so soft to Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, like how iron was made soft for Dawud alayhi salam. That Allah had made iron soft for Dawud alayhi salam, that he could mold iron to be able to make weapons and armor and everything. It was like, as you could say, putty in his hands. That was how iron was to Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam. So he said, in a like manner, Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah had such a grasp on hadith that it was as though it was putty in his hands. So well he knew the field. Then he mentioned قال ابن داسة سمعت أبا داود يقول كتبت عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 500,000 حديث انتخبت منها ما ضمنته هذا الكتاب. He says that Imam Ibn Dasa, he said, I heard Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah saying that I wrote a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, meaning what his chains reaching Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which amounted to 500,000 ahadith, and I have taken from it, which I have placed into this kitab here, which you know as Sunan Abu Dawud. Then he says, وقال زكريا الساجي كتاب الله أصل الإسلام وكتاب السنن لأبي داود عهد الإسلام. Again, all the praises for Imam Abu Dawud in his kitab. Imam Zakaria as-Saji, who was one of the students, as you saw now a moment ago, one of the students of Imam Abu Dawud, he said that the Quran is the origin of Islam. It is the source of Islam. It's where everything springs from. And he says that this kitab, Sunan Abu Dawud, it is like the ahd, it is like that pledge of Islam. So, such a high and lofty place it holds in Islam and in the Sharia, that such a high praise he has praised this kitab. That is why it is one of the, as you call it, the 6 famous books of Hadith. Then he says, Unzur Tadhkiratul Hufaz and Tarikh Baghdad. He says you can reference the kitabs, which is Tadhkiratul Hufaz, which is when you go into the field of biographies, Jarh wa Ta'adil, then Tadhkiratul Hufaz is a kitab you can't do without. And the next kitab is Tarikh Baghdad, the history of Baghdad, written by the famous Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi, and also a very top kitab. So anyhow, he said if you want to read the references for where that is found, you can look up in those 2 kitabs over there. And like I say, for many other biographies and things, you will find it in these 2 kitabs over here. So anyhow, he goes on now and will give you in the next footnote about Imam An-Nasai, and then the praises for Imam An-Nasai, then the praising and who Imam Ibn Majah rahimahullah was, and stuff of that sort. And then he'll mention onwards in the next page under the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah. But anyhow, we're not going to be reading through every footnote, so in any case, we'll stop on there. If you want to read the other footnotes yourself to get a bit of a understanding of who Imam An-Nasai, Imam Ibn Majah rahimahumullah were, then you should take the time out to read those too. Okay, so now anyhow we move on to page 98, where we will continue onwards. So he says, Ahadithul Kutubul Arba'a. What about the ahadith from the 4 other books? Meaning, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are in a category all of their own. They are all authentic, we don't touch them. But the other 4, which is Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasai and Ibn Majah, these are known as the 4 books. So when you hear the 6 books of hadith, it refers to these 6 that we know. And when you hear the 4 books of hadith, then it refers to these 4, which is Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasai and Ibn Majah. So he says, وفي هذه الكتب الأربعة أقسام من الأحاديث من الصحاح والحسان والضعاف وتسميتها بالصحاح الستة بطريق التغليب. He says that in these 4 books, the ahadith are broken down into being sahih, you have those which are hasan, and you have those which are da'if. So, and this is what I mentioned previously, that the term hisan is the plural of the word hasan. So hasan singular, hisan plural. Sahihun is singular, sihah is plural. Da'ifun singular, da'af is plural. And he says that when we call these books the Sihahu Sitta, the 6 authentic books of hadith, he says it's bitariqi taghlib, because of the majority. Taghlib, ghalba, the majority. The overwhelming amount of hadith from these kitabs are sahih. That is why they are termed as being the 6 sahih books of hadith. Not literally meaning that every hadith in these 4 other books as well are also sahih. Okay, just one more additional point over here. He says, Mustalahul Baghawi, the terminology of Imam al-Baghawi rahimahullah. Now, who again is Imam al-Baghawi? Okay, let me read the thing, then I'll come to Imam al-Baghawi. He says, وسمى صاحب المصابيح أحاديث غير الشيخين بالحسان وهو قريب من هذا الوجه قريب من المعنى اللغوي أو هو اصطلاح جديد منه. He says that the author of Al-Masabih, he called the ahadith which are from other than Bukhari and Muslim, he called it as being Hisan, and not the Sihah al-Sitta, but rather he would call it the Hisan. And he says, وَهُوَ قَرِيبٌ مِنْ هَذَا الْوَجْهِ. It's similar to what we just mentioned above here. And he says, قَرِيبٌ مِنَ الْمَعَانَى اللُّغَوِي. It's close to the linguistic meaning. Or otherwise you say, this is some new terminology from his side. Like for example, if he were to call it the 4 Hasan books of Hadith instead of the 6 Sahih books of Hadith, if you want to put it that way. Okay, just to repeat this again. So, the author of Al-Masabih. Okay, let me mention it as we go along here. So this Kitab Al-Masabih, its actual name is Masabih al-Sunnah. That's the actual name of the Kitab. Now, who is Imam al-Baghawi and where does he feature in the whole thing? How Imam al-Baghawi rahimahullah is famous and everything is due to his Kitab Masabih al-Sunnah. And the Kitab Masabih al-Sunnah follows up later on, and especially in today's times in the Darul al-Ulum setting, this Imam al-Baghawi and Masabih al-Sunnah and things are very famous. Although you may not see the name al-Masabih or you may not see the name al-Baghawi. However, the kitab which everybody know, which is Mishkatul Masabih, Mishkat, as it's generally just called, the book of Hadith known as Mishkat, it was based on this kitab Masabih al-Sunnah by Imam at-Tabrizi rahimahullah, and he had made certain small changes and stuff, as you will see in the Muqaddimah of Mishkat. But in any case, so Mishkat is based on this kitab al-Masabih al-Sunnah, so that is where Imam Baghawi and this whole Masabih al-Sunnah and things fit into the whole thing. But in any case, that's now a bit on Imam al-Baghawi. So anyway, Imam al-Baghawi, the author of Masabih al-Sunnah, he named those hadith, or rather those books of hadith, apart from Bukhari and Muslim, he called it Hisan. Now, as we just mentioned a moment ago, Hisan is plural of the word Hasan, like the word Sihah is plural of the word Sahih. And instead of calling it the Sihah al-Sitta, the 6 Sahih books of hadith, Imam al-Baghawi, he called it, like for example, as you would maybe say, the Hisan al-Arba'a, something of the sort like that, the 4 famous, or rather the 4 Hasan books of hadith. Why? Because the fact is that these kitabs are not only restricted to Sahih ahadith, there are Hasan ahadith in it and there are Da'if ahadith in it as well. So therefore Imam al-Baghawi, he went more, as you can say, technical. So he didn't just for the sake of the majority being Sahih, so he called it Sahih. No, he said that because of the fact that not everything is Sahih inside it, so therefore he preferred to call it as being Hisan instead of Sihah. So that is what this part over here had mentioned. We move on now onwards to page 99. He says Kitab al-Darimi. Now this is another one of the famous ulama of hadith, Imam al-Darimi, and his kitab is known as Sunan al-Darimi. So he says وقال بعضهم كتاب الدارمي أحرى وأليق بجعله سادس الكتب لأن رجاله أقل ضعفا ووجود الأحاديث المنكرة والشاذة فيه نادر وله أسانيد عالية وثلاثياته أكثر من ثلاثيات البخاري. He says that some of the ulama, they made the statement saying that the kitab of Imam al-Darimi, which is Sunan al-Darimi, it is more rightful and deserving to be placed as the 6th famous book of hadith, or the 6th most authentic book of hadith. Why? Because the narrators in Sunan al-Darimi, they have less weakness in them, and to find munkar and shaz ahadith in this kitab Sunan al-Darimi, it is something which is nadir. Nadir meaning rare. So it's something which you find which is rare to find shadh and munkar hadith in Sunan al-Darimi. And also walahu asanidun aliyah, the sanads which are in Sunan al-Darimi, it is aliyah, it is high. It's not weak chains. Okay, one more point from the point of when you, and this is something, if you actually go into the chains of narrations, you find a sanad may be authentic, but it may not be aliyah in that sense. When we talk about a sanad being aliyah, it means that the chains are also very short, meaning that, let's say for example, in the one hadith you have maybe 7 people in the chain, and in this hadith maybe only got 4 people in the chain. So comparing the two to one another, the one which is 4 people only in the chain, but of course it's authentic, that nobody missed out in it, there's no dropped person, then such a chain is higher in rank than the one which has 7 people in the chain. So that is what we talk about when we say the asanid aliyah. It's a sanadun ali, it is a high sanad. And then lastly he says, and the thulathiyat, I'll explain in a moment. He says, which you find in Sunan al-Darimi, is more than the thulathiyat which you find in Bukhari. The famous Sahih al-Bukhari has got less thulathiyat than Sunan al-Darimi. Alright, now on to the point of thulathiyat. What exactly are thulathiyat? Thulathiyat are such a hadith where there are only 3 people in the chain. Now Imam Bukhari rahimahullah has reported a couple of these like this in Sahih al-Bukhari, where there's only 3 people between him and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they are very high chains. There's only 3 people, as you would, if you remember, we did some time back the golden chain. This is also to do similar in that sense there, that there's only just 3 people, then he reaches Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in the kitab known as Sunan al-Darimi, there are even more of these hadith which have only 3 people in the chain before reaching Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than you would find in Sahih al-Bukhari. So some of these ulama, they're saying that since Sunan al-Darimi is on such a high level of authenticity and stuff, it is more rightful that this book be termed the 6th most authentic book of hadith instead of Ibn Majah. That's basically, just basically giving the different opinions of the ulama who they don't disagree and want to throw Ibn Majah to the side. No, it's just that they feel that there are certain books which are more authentic, so put this one as the 6th one instead of Ibn Majah. So some chose the Muwatta of Imam Malik, and some chose the Musnad of the Sunan of Imam al-Darimi rahimahullah. Okay, so anyway, that was the end of page 99. So we move on to page 100. He says, وَهَذِهِ الْمَذْكُورَاتْ مِنَ الْكُتُبِ أَشْهُرُ الْكُتُبِ وَغَيْرُهَا مِنَ الْكُتُبِ كَثِيرَةٌ شَهِيرَةٌ. He says, these books which we have mentioned here now, they are the most well-known of books. But he says there are others as well from the books of hadith which there are many and they are well-known. And you yourself, you will know, for example, he has not mentioned the Musnad of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah here. He has not mentioned the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim rahimahullah here. He didn't mention the Musannaf of Imam Ibn Abi Shayba or the Musannaf of Imam Abdul Razak. There are a ton of other books of hadith apart from those which are well known and famous in the actual sense. And apart from Sunan al-Darimi, you have Sunan of Imam al-Daraqutni rahimahullah. And these A'immah themselves did not only restrict themselves to writing one book of hadith. For example, Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah didn't only write Sunan Abu Dawud, he wrote other books like the Marasil and other books of hadith as well. So the books of hadith which are well known are like the ones I mentioned now: Sunan Ibn Abi Shayba, the Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba, Musannaf Abdul Razak, and these are as you call it, the generally known books of hadith that somebody who's read some of the more names of hadith would come across these ones. All the books of Imam al-Tabarani, Al-Mu'ajjam al-Kabir, Al-Mu'ajjam al-Kabir, Al-Mu'ajjam al-Awsat, Al-Mu'ajjam al-Saghir, and then of course Ad-Du'a. All these books, Musnad al-Shamiyin, all these books of hadith, the Musnad of Imam Ishaq ibn Rahaway, of course you have the books of Imam Nu'aym ibn Hammad, Hilyatul Awliya, the Musnad of Imam al-Humaydi. You have, like I mentioned, you have the Musnad of Imam al-Shafi'i. There's even the Musnad of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. So there are numerous books of ahadith which are existing, which are maybe not as well known as some of the others, but doesn't mean that they are any less than the other books of hadith. So there you have the Musnad of Imam al-Harith, you have the Imam Abu Awana, Imam Abu Asim, you have the Musnad of Imam al-Bazzar, and this not to forget Imam al-Bayhaqi, Sunan al-Kubra, and the other books that Imam al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah has written, Shu'abul Iman. All these various books of hadith that some are well known, some are not so well known, but there are numerous books of hadith as well. So anyway, that's just basically what he was saying, is that what we mentioned here are the most famous books of hadith, but there are numerous others which are many, and they are well known, and there are many apart from those ones who are not quite so well known as well. Okay, I think it's best if we actually stop on this point over here, because we've got very little actually left before the completion of the kitab. So if we push, we could finish the kitab tonight. Otherwise, we could hold on and have one final class before completing the kitab. Okay, then we'll be stopping then on this point here, inshallah. So if anyone has any questions regarding anything that we have done here tonight, you can feel free to ask your questions here now. Okay, question over here, if you can just repeat the definition of Jami'. Alright, the definition of Jami' means, again, like I mentioned, that these names come to do with the layout, how the book of hadith is laid out, according to the categorization of hadith. That's where the names come from. So Jami' refers to those hadith which are laid out according to, as you call it now, the certain chapters according to topics. Let me put it according to topics of the deen. Like you have the chapter of Aqidah, the chapter of signs of Qiyamah, chapter on virtues, chapter on tafsir, chapter on manners, chapter on ahkam, the laws of the sharia, stuff like that. So all laws will come under that chapter. Everything to do with manners will come under that chapter. Everything to do with tafsir will come under that chapter, and so on and so forth. Which is the difference between that and sunan, is that the sunan would have the broken down into many different chapters, exactly laid out like a book of fiqh, in that it would have the chapter of tahara, and tahara would be broken down into this, and then the chapter of salah. So the salah is not put under tahara, Sawm is not put under salah. Each one is laid out on its own individually, while in a Jami', if it's to do with a mas'ala of the ahkam, salah, zakat and stuff like this, you'll find it under one category of that sort. So that's the difference between the Jami' and the Sunan. Okay, another question over here. Jami', Sunan, Mu'jam. Have I left out any ones that have been mentioned? Yes. You have Jami', you have Sunan, you have Mu'jam, and you have additionally Musnad. Musnad is another one which I mentioned earlier. Those are not the only ones. In fact, there are more even than those ones. You have the additional ones, if you heard now, like I mentioned, the Mustadrak. Mustadrak is... Okay, you basically have the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim. Now, Mustadrak, it gets its name from, or rather, I should say, how the Mustadrak works is that, in fact, we did touch on this last week when we spoke about the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, rahimahullah, where Imam Hakim went around and found a hadith which he felt met the criteria of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, rahimahumullah. So, a hadith which are laid out in that manner, that book is now termed as being a Mustadrak. So that was Mustadrak. And then the one additional term I mentioned was Sahih as well. That a book is called as being Sahih when the author has taken it upon himself to only list authentic hadith. That's why you have Sahih Ibn Hibban, Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih Al-Bukhari, and Sahih Muslim, and so on and so forth. That was Sahih. And then you have the additional one which I mentioned earlier, like the what you call this now, the Musannaf, the Musannaf of Imam Ibn Abi Shaybah. That's an additional one. So a Musannaf, this works according to, as you say now, according to particular topics. Okay, the Musannaf, which is the last type. The Musannaf is the last of the types of hadith over here, and the Musannaf is laid out kind of similar to a Sunan, if you want to put it in that particular manner, that a Musannaf resembles a Sunan. However, okay, the difference that you find, okay, like you say, the only way you actually see what a particular book of hadith is when you actually open the kitab up. Then you can look at the layout of the chapters, and then you will be able to tell yourself what type of book this is. So a Musannaf is very similar to a Sunan in that it is also laid out in the manner of a Sunan, according to, as you would say, a book of fiqh. So you would have the Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, and so on and so forth. Difference between them is that, okay, there's very little real difference if you actually look between a Musannaf and a Sunan. They are both, as you call it, Kitab al-Tahara. Okay, where you may find the difference is that in a Sunan, you would have Kitab al-Tahara, and everything to do with Tahara will be found under that category. But in a Musannaf, it's more according to topic. So you would find maybe Kitab al-Tahara, then you would find Kitab al-Hayd, you would find Kitab al-Salah, and you would find Kitab al-Jumu'ah separately. You would find Kitab al-Eidain separately, and so on and so forth. You'll find Kitab al-Janaiz separately. Not as put under as sub-chapters, all under the like Kitab al-Salah is the big header, then Jumu'ah and Janaiz and Eidain and Taraweeh and everything comes under that. That's the way, as you would say, the difference between a Sunan and a Musannaf. But other than that, a Musannaf and a Sunan looks very much the same, and you could actually get confused, or rather, it would miss you as to which book it actually is. Is it a Musannaf or is it a Sunan? So those are the names of the various types of books that we had passed by. Alright, another question over here. Why weren't the other books of Hadith, such as the book of Imam Ad-Darimi rahimahullah, included in as a Sahih al-Sitta or Sihah al-Sitta, or are these books different according to some ulama? Yes, this is what we had actually done here previously, in that different ulama chose different books to what they consider to be the 6 most authentic books of Hadith. Okay, so the different ulama chose different books of hadith to what they consider to be the 6 most authentic books. So for example, we passed by that some ulama, they chose, instead of Sunan Ibn Majah, they chose the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Other ulama, they chose the Sunan Ad-Darimi, and you would find other ulama who would have chosen different kitabs in place of. Okay, you see, the one that they normally replace is Sunan Ibn Majah. And again, the reason for that is because as far as these 6 books are concerned, Sunan Ibn Majah is on the lowest level of them all. The others are all more authentic. Like I mentioned some time back, that the most authentic is Bukhari. Second is Sahih Muslim. Third is Nasai. Fourth is Abu Dawud. Fifth is Tirmidhi, and 6th, last and finally, is Ibn Majah. That's how they come one after the other, like that. That is why those ulama who feel that a different book should have been put in, they prefer these books like the Musnad, the Sunan of Imam Ad-Darimi, or the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah, for example. They put this one in the place of Sunan Ibn Majah. So it's not something which is unanimous, but it is the Kutubul Mashhura, the well-known 6 books of Hadith, that it has been accepted for years now as being the 6 famous books of Hadith. That is why we go along with it in that manner. Okay, question over here. Must you believe in all 6 books? I know some who only accept first 2 Sahih. This is actually something which we did touch on previously. And I would say yes, it is a condition that you have to believe not only in the 6 books of Hadith, but you have to believe in all the books of Hadith. People who only accept Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are people who are juhal. I wouldn't just call them juhal, but murakkab juhal, people whose ignorance have compounded upon, packed on each other, that they reach this level of such an ignoramus that they only accept Bukhari and Muslim. Such people, they are, I would say, they are lost cause, so ignorant they are to make such statements. It borders on, basically you are a step away from becoming a complete hadith rejecter. And we know one thing is that hadith rejectors are kuffar. There's no 2 opinions about it. And you know, this is one of the things that, whether it comes from a Salafi, whether it's a Sufi, whether you want to say Deobandi, whether the Baralvis, everyone is unanimous that the hadith rejector is a kafir. That's how widespread the fatwa is with regards to hadith rejectors. Now here you come along as a person and you say, no, I only accept Bukhari and Muslim, I reject everything else. You will most likely find your abode in Jahannam as a result of your stupidity. A man, if this was a muhaddith, someone who has memorized millions of ahadith, and he comes along and say that there is nothing authentic besides Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, then it is based on knowledge that he makes the statement, and that would be his tafarrud opinion, his individual opinion, not something applying to everybody. But in any case, that would be his individual opinion, not a problem. But when a man comes along and he does not know how to do istinja, he can't clean himself in the toilet, but he wants to come along and say that I reject everything else. Why? What is, and this is what something I mentioned right when we started this kitab, that many people say this hadith is da'if, this is da'if, this is da'if. But what exactly does da'if mean? And as you could see when we did the classes, as we passed through, that da'if isn't that these books of hadith, or rather these hadith terminologies, it's not black and white. There's a lot of grey in between. That the hadith may be da'if, but due to some factors, it gets raised. It may be da'if, but the majority of muhaddithin say, in matters of fadail, for example, you can act upon it. So it's not black and white. So people, you see, a person who comes along and say, I reject everything besides Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, in the first place, such people they refute themselves in their stupidity. Why? Because these people do not know what ahadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. You will find them doing things, performing salah in a particular manner, holding certain beliefs and stuff which comes from the other books of hadith. But out of their ignorance, they are unaware that this action, for example, comes from maybe Sunan Ibn Majah. They probably assume in their mind that this all is found in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. But in fact, and this is, as you would see if you passed by from this kitab, that there are thousands of ahadith which are authentic, which are not in Bukhari and Muslim. So therefore, many things which people do and act upon in their general day-to-day life and things come from the other books of ahadith as well. So if you reject it, then you are rejecting these things as well. So you should not be doing it. It's like you have a hadith rejector. He comes along and he rejects all hadith. But, okay, you have two types of hadith rejectors. One which rejects salah in its entirety and say salah means dua, so you just sit there and you make dua and finish, that's a salah. Then you have another type, of a lesser degree hadith rejector, also a kafir and everything, but he would make salah. So when you ask him that, prove me from the Quran the method of salah, they are baffled and they are unable to come forth with an answer. Why? Because the Quran does not describe the method of performing salah. Rather, it is something which comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they contradict themselves in their stupidity. In a like manner, people who are of this opinion that I only accept Bukhari and Muslim and I reject everything else, they contradict themselves through their stupidity as well. Wallahu a'lam. And lastly, the point on this that I mentioned earlier is that such a person should prepare his abode in Jahannam. Why? Because you are rejecting authentic ahadith as well. Ahadith which are of the, as you say, on the highest level of authenticity, just like Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, because you say now, it's not in these two kitabs, so I don't accept it. So therefore, ahadith which are on equal strength as those in Bukhari and Muslim, you will be rejecting. And these people don't think further than their nose. So if you were to go and look at many ahkam of the Sharia which are derived from hadith, from the other books of hadith, and you were to come and say now, I reject this is not part of Islam, you would become a kafir from the basis of rejecting something from the Sharia. And then you would find that this action, for example, is established through maybe Sunan Abu Dawud, and it don't come in Bukhari or Muslim. Yet if you reject it, you become a kafir. So therefore, a person who makes a statement like this is making it out of pure stupidity, and is walking a very thin line, such a slippery slope that if he's not saved from it, he may very well find himself in Jahannam if Allah does not save him before there. So it's not something minute, it's a very serious issue that you find people making these sort of senseless claims. Wallahu a'lam. Alright then, so we have no further questions then for the class. Then inshallah we will stop on this point here, and next week we will continue onwards from page 100, and inshallah it will be our final class for this kitab, Muqaddimatun fi Usul al-Hadith, and inshallah we will end and complete the kitab next week, and you will then, as you now have heard the whole kitab, you will be able to do revision on your own time. If there's something you don't understand or something you forget, slip your mind and stuff, you can always go back and learn more. And this kitab has, what is actually done is given you, like the name say, Muqaddimatun fi Usul al-Hadith. It has given you an introduction to the science of hadith, which is generally sufficient for the normal person. There are many terms which are used beyond what is mentioned in this kitab, like you saw now tonight. All these additional stuff, the difference between a Jami' and a Musnad and the Sunan and stuff like this, is not taught to you in this kitab over here, but rather it was something I mentioned from my side. So there are numerous things which are dealing with this science of Mustalahul Hadith, and of course from this point onwards here comes the issue of Jarh wa Ta'dil, the sifting between the narrators being authentic and not authentic, and all that sort of stuff stems. This science of Mustalahul Hadith and Usulul Hadith is very vast, so there's a lot which is out there, but this kitab has efficiently and sufficiently given you a knowledge of hadith. So if you come across a term and muhaddith is this hadith is da'if or this hadith is sahih and so on and so forth, then you understand what it means. It's not just simply, okay, it's da'if, I throw it to the side and stuff of the sort, because now you understand that it's not a black and white issue, there's a lot of grey. So I have to investigate this narration, I have to see what the muhaddithin have said, I have to see are there other shawahid, other different tabi' tawabi' or shawahid for this hadith which may strengthen it and raise it to the level of hasan, and so on and so forth. So anyway then, like I say, we'll stop here on this point, and inshallah next week we continue on from Masadir al-Suyuti fi Jami' al-Jawami'. So then we end on this point and we say وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.